Hi, everyone. My name is Kylie, and I am a section manager for SMPTE Hollywood, and I'm bringing you another session of Ask the Hollywood Expert. And today I'm joined by Jett Galindo, a mastering engineer. Jett, do you want to show your video? Oh, Zoom. There we go.
Hi.
Always a good time when we're doing these webinars. You'd think we would have it down perfectly by now, but
that's what makes our lives exciting in this career.
Exactly. What would we have otherwise? Well, thank you so much for joining us today. These sessions are about diving into younger professionals' careers and understanding their career path and providing inspiration and guidance to others that might want to follow in their footsteps or don't even know what your job is. So you're a mastering engineer at the bakery, and you've worked on albums for artists like Barbra Streisand, Reinhart, Weezer, and the La La Land original soundtrack. So that's amazing. So let's start with your roots, where you grew up and how you got into all this.
Sure.
And for everyone on the call on Zoom, if you want to enter questions for Jett into the Q&A box, then we'll answer as many as possible. All right. So let's go. So tell me about your early years, where you grew up and how you got into sound.
I'm from the Philippines, and I'm very much vocal about sharing the fact that I come all the way from the Philippines and moving here to the US to pursue this career path as a sound engineer and eventually in a more niche field in sound called mastering. But growing up, I've always been into music, and it's something that's been ingrained to me by my parents who since I was born, they've been actually managing and teaching cover bands. That's my parents' bread and butter. And they eventually ended up creating this band that took off in the Philippines. So now my parents also manage this well-known rock band called AGs in the Philippines, AEGIS. So since I was born, I've always been just immersed in modern contemporary music. For me, my pastime as a kid was just watching MTV with my sisters and a bit of Cartoon Network on the side, but our TV is always just stationed at MTV just because it's something we're passionate about. And also going into my school years, I also got deeply immersed in classical music, and that background in classical music has actually helped really fine tune my ears to the subtleties and nuance adjustments that happen within the realm of mastering. So I'm very much just grateful to have had that upbringing that led me to being a mastering engineer today, and also a vinyl cutter. Yeah. So if you're curious, it's the vinyl cutting machine.
That is amazing. I've seen vinyl cut one time,
Cool.
and it was the most like spiritual experience I think I've ever had.
It's the closest.
It's so physical,
yeah.
and yeah.
It's like the most physical way you can touch music.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So with the resurgence of vinyl, have you been busier doing vinyl cutting?
Yes, actually, we have been. And the most exciting thing about just the resurgence of vinyl is it's never stopped and it's even expanded beyond the world of record labels. A lot of independent musicians now release their music on vinyl. And the most interesting niche genre that has started to get really serious about vinyl, which I like to talk about a lot because I do a lot of work for this genre, is video game music. So I actually do a lot of vinyl cutting for video game soundtracks, and just it's just exciting how much the return of vinyl just signifies just the growing passion for owning music. especially in the age of streaming, where a lot of music starts to become more accessible, but not in this form of ownership.
Yeah, I covet my vinyl collection. I inherited a lot of it,
Nice.
but I've been
Oh
collecting on
wow.
my own. I love it. So it's so cool that you've done that. Um, so you said you grew up in the Philippines and you came to the US to go to school, is that right?
That's correct.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and well, it wasn't my first time in the U.S., but it was my third second trip to the US where I actually ended up staying to study. So in Berklee College of Music, I studied music production and engineering with a minor in acoustics and electronics. And I owe so much of my growth and success because of my studies in Berkeley, and also the community of musicians and creators that I've met from my college days to now also work in the industry. And as much as I grow, my peers grow as well. So no matter what school you come from, just maintaining that connection with your colleagues from your earlier years where you all were like growing together is just um, you're gonna reap the fruits of that friendship.
Yeah, that's I think maybe the most important part about choosing to go to school is developing that peer network.
Hmm.
It's invaluable. So I guess you came to the US for school probably when you were like 18, 19. What?
That's a good question. And that wasn't even a question, but I came to the US when I was 24, turning 25.
Okay, I
Hmm.
totally just assumed that.
I
See,
look
there's all kinds of
23.
biases.
Just kidding.
Yes.
I wish.
You came to the US very young, and you came here, I assume, by yourself, and you had to build your life. Did you have any connections here already?
My one connection was my good friend from my choir in the Philippines, who actually went to Berkeley before me,
Oh,
and
that's great.
that's how I was able to learn more about the school and decided for myself that this is the school I really wanted to go to. But besides that, all my family is in the Philippines, except for like some distant relatives. But my immediate family is in the Philippines. So, I moving to Boston. I didn't know anyone besides my friend GP. I was and there were a lot of like complications with my student visa. So
Mhm.
I was 2 weeks late for school. I literally arrived on the very last day of enrollment where you can actually make it to school and not lose your spot. So it was
Wow.
a very tumultuous first few days in Boston, but um, yeah, somehow still managed to get out of it. Uh, Me doing this today. So
Yeah, ended up okay, thank God. So I think a lot of people that haven't experienced immigration into the US don't really know how difficult the visa process is. I mean,
oh yes.
it's hard to get a student visa even, and beyond that. What other challenges were there just to leaving your family and coming so far? I mean, a lot of people go to college and leave home, but not that many people move across an ocean.
Well, that's a very true statement, and I'm pretty sure many of us can agree to the fact that immigration has just gotten even harder. I'm actually very grateful that I got my green card in 2017, right before like a lot of immigration complications has started to take place. And anyone's welcome to reach out to me for advice and questions about immigration process as wanting to work here in the US. And I managed to get in through the EB1 green card. They call it the Einstein visa, where you have to prove that you have it's literally called alien of extraordinary ability. That's the kind of visa that you have to get, but there are also other ways to pursue this. But besides the immigration, it's also the culture shock. that I didn't anticipate would be happening, because Philippines is very much an English speaking country. We were American colony for 40 years, back in the uh, in 1940s. That's when it began. Early 1900s. So yeah, 40 years. But besides that, there's a lot of I think the most culture shock I experienced was when I graduated. And I had, because in Berklee College of Music, you're surrounded by this really amazing, nurturing bubble of musicians, creators from all over the globe. You're surrounded by musicians from Spain, Iran, Australia. I have friends from Italy, South Africa. It's just an amazing time. But when I graduated, my very first internship was in New York, and it's in this amazing studio called Avatar Studios, that's now called Power Station, which actually eventually got acquired by Berklee College of Music, which was unexpected. But I was the only foreigner in that studio, and they are serious about uh, the, the whole running the commercial recording facility. That's during my time, like Paul McCartney, Bobby McFerrin, like several Broadway ensembles were recording in Avatar Studios, and there was no time to really coddle this intern. And somehow it's like, even the way my manner of speaking had to adapt, because everyone just spoke fast English, and it's like they're not gonna slow down with my pace. It's like there was a lot of adjustment in that sense. It's the culture shock of like, you don't just need to be able to speak English, but you have to adapt to the intense culture of the music industry. Fortunately, I was not as like unprepared, just because I worked in a recording studio in the Philippines as well. So I knew about just the culture of the workplace. But again, the Philippine recording studios don't compare to how intense commercial studios here in America can get. So yeah, that's one of the things I had to cope with.
That's really interesting. It's hard to get into the workforce after you go to school, and to then have those extra barriers. I can't imagine.
Just to add to that too, the audio industry is also very much male dominated. And
Mhm.
it's funny that I didn't even think of that, but the fact that you're a woman, and also as an international, like a minority, there were a lot of things that were uh, just much more harder to step in. But just having people who remain supportive along the way, just peers, family, friends, professors who supported me at every step, really helped me just keep my eye on my passion, and not let um, being a woman, or being an international um, person, like, hinder from the opportunities. So just keep going.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did, because
Thank you.
like you said, yeah, the sound industry is very male dominated. I don't know about mastering, but sound editing is about 3% women on the top TV and movies. So a lot more work to be done, but I'm sure you're really blazing the trail for those people.
Hopefully. Also, a shout out to many organizations that have helped just empower women in this field. Sound Girls is an organization that I'm really involved with. They're amazing. Women's Audio Mission also has a commercial recording facility in the Bay Area, and they have this WAMCon conventions that I'm also actually going to be speaking at. So, and then there's even an organization called Women in Vinyl. So it's women who work in the vinyl community, and there's this amazing woman named Jen Eugenio, who just profiles women from different um, subfields in the world of vinyl. So yeah, you should check it out. It's really cool.
That's amazing. I'm going to check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, I was going to ask, overall, do you know how many vinyl cutters there are currently working?
Actually, it's starting to get more and more again. It's really exciting, and the fact that since I got connected with women in vinyl, I also got to meet more women who are also vinyl cutters, and it's just amazing to have that, to get to know these people who actually know what you go through, and also be women. It's like it's a really cool little support group in there. But yeah, it's starting to get more and more, and what we always like to say, just realistically, is you can't really go to school to be a vinyl cutter or to work in a vinyl commercial facility that presses records. There's so many career paths in the vinyl industry, but it's not necessarily something that can be learned in school. That's why the Women in Vinyl website is really helpful, because really the way you get into the field is to meet people who work in the field. And there's this Making Vinyl conference that happens every year. And by connecting with these people, that's like the most effective way to really get your foot in the door. Because for me, I got into vinyl mastering because I um, was hired to be a mastering engineer for the mastering lab. And my mentor, Doug Sachs, the man behind all the Pink Floyd, The Doors, Eagles, you name it, you can Google him, Douglas Sachs. He was also known as one of the lead um, people behind the vinyl format. And he was just an amazing mentor to learn the art of vinyl cutting with. And I didn't anticipate, I wasn't expecting that I'll end up becoming a vinyl cutting engineer. It's just something that happened because I became a mastering engineer in a studio that cuts vinyl records.
Mm.
So yeah, I did not expect growing up in the Philippines that I'll end up cutting vinyl records. I don't think anyone would ever anticipate that future ahead of them.
Right? No, no way. So
Yeah.
we're talking a lot about your job. I want to make sure everyone that's joined, especially that's newer or isn't as familiar with sound, can you explain what exactly a mastering engineer does?
I'm glad you asked, because it a lot of people like to say or quickly like to label mastering as like the dark arts, because people just don't seem to grasp the concept of what we do. But a simple way of describing it is music production can be safely categorized into three steps. First is recording, and I'll compare it to the analogy of food. We're called the bakery anyway. Our studio is called the bakery. But recording, you're recording every individual instruments. That's like gathering all your ingredients when you're cooking a dish. And then the next step, once you've recorded all the individual tracks, sounds, is you have to mix them. You have to make sure that every element in this production all works cohesively and in harmony with each other. And in the world of food, that's when you start combining all the ingredients in just the right measurements. You don't want it too sweet, you don't want it salty. It has to be like the perfect mix of ingredients. um, then mastering happens when um, it's when you just put that dish in the oven and you let it cook. And in the world of mastering, once you've mixed your music, you want to make sure that it translates as effectively as possible in various listening environments, various commercial playback systems, and in different formats. You're going to be listening to the music in streaming, in vinyl records, in cassettes. Cassettes are making a comeback. But the mastering engineer ensures that your music translates the best it could get in all these different playback systems. And it also comes into play the fact that if you're working on an album, you want to make sure that each song in the album works cohesively to sound like an album. So mastering engineers also have to ensure that the flow of the music from the first song all to the way to the last song just feels good. And I think the keyword is feels good, because at the end of the day we work with a lot of numbers and adjustments by the tenths of a dB, but the end goal is to make sure that the music sounds and feels good. And um no, there's no strict rule to get there. There are standards, but um music is the first and foremost end goal. So yeah, that's mastering, and I hope that helps explain what we do.
Yeah, we did mixing and mastering when I was in college,
That's
and
cool.
audio has never been my thing. So it was, a part of a class, and I wish that had been explained in that way. Because I was like, mastering, am I not just like normalizing all the volume? I don't
That's a and also I believe mastering, the definition of mastering is different in film as well. So I'll
know.
leave that definition of mastering to the film experts. But yeah, this is the definition of mastering in the sense of the
Hmm.
music world. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're exposed to it from school.
Yeah, I exposed to it, don't have the instinct or the feel for it, so I have a lot of respect for people like you.
Sometimes
uh,
it's like you don't know where you end up excelling at. You just
mhm.
don't realize it until the opportunity arises in front of you, and you can ask yourself, do you like this or not? Do you get it or not? So yeah, I'm glad that you were able to explore that and know in yourself that that's not your thing.
Did you go through that process too, where you wanted to be in music and audio and sound, but you had to
That's a
hone
good
in on exactly which part of it really
that's
sung out to you?
That's a good question, because um, I think it's very important to have webinars like this, because a lot of young aspiring entertainment professionals don't realize the breadth of all the career paths that's available for them. I know this is a very simplified way of describing it, but there are kids out there who just want to be like Grammy winning rock stars, not realizing that their passion can lie in the most obscure field that's thriving. Could be forensic audio, or could be classical um, recording engineer. You could be a songwriter. You could be actually even in music business. You can't really know until those opportunities are made aware at you.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh-oh, did I lose you, Jet?
For me, growing, it says your connection is am I good?
Yeah, you froze for a second.
Okay. Oh,
All good.
but yeah, to get to the point of wanting to be a sound engineer, because in the Philippines, growing up, I didn't know what a sound engineer was, but I just knew that I wanted to be in music. But when I was growing up, and I was already in college even, I actually went to college in the Philippines in psychology, because my parents, they are in music business, but they told me that I should get a real degree, and then once I get my real degree I can do whatever I want. Um, but I just knew that I wanted to pursue music, but at the same time I've always had this growing passion for just computers and technology. I grew up with two siblings, so we're all girls, but I'm the middle kid, and my dad just loved encouraged me to tinker with computers and stuff. So I knew how to like build websites as a kid, build my computers. So I just wanted something that combines music and technology. But what combines that? Because I knew from the get go that I'm not a songwriter, I'm not a producer, but I just love music and technology. So when I toured here in the U.S. back in 2004 with my choir, that's when I met my friend GP, who actually told me that there's a career path called sound engineering. And that's when everything just felt laser focused. And that's when I learned that, okay, this is the path I knew I wanted, and then everything else didn't matter. So yeah, it's it's just having kids know that these career paths are available for them, or make can make the life changing um, decision uh, available for them.
Yeah, that's so great. I had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah,
Kind of go
many
through a
of
lot of trial and
us.
error. But yeah, a lot of us do, and that's okay too. So
Exactly, that's good.
with vinyl cutting, can you explain that process a little bit?
Sure. So on the get-go, a lot of people who are not familiar with this world don't realize that vinyl records don't start out as vinyl, because I'm sure you're familiar with how a vinyl record looks like, but it actually starts out as this material. So it's bigger than your standard vinyl record. This is 14
Mhm.
inch, and your regular vinyl disc is 12 inch. But in the most standard procedure of creating your vinyl record, it starts out as this material. And this comes into play in the very first step of vinyl production, which is vinyl mastering. So you have your music and you want it released on vinyl. In order to be put on vinyl, the music has to be cut with a heated stylus um, and on a vinyl lathe into this material. This is actually an aluminum disc coated with nitrocellulose lacquer. So the nitrocellulose lacquer is a very malleable material, and with the heated stylus, it actually cuts the music directly into this disc. So all these grooves is actually being etched onto your disc. This is actually called a lacquer disc or acetate. So we do a lot of test cuts to cut your vinyl record. But once the actual master is cut, you never play it. Well, we don't. We don't play it because this gets shipped straight overnight into the next stage, which is electroplating. And I hope I have, yeah, I'll show you an example. But this gets turned into, and I have to wear protective gloves for this because,
Now we're getting serious.
yeah, watch out. Okay. It actually gets turned into a metal master. Uh, Here you go.
Ooh.
So um, the lacquer, yeah, this is sharp, but this is actually created when the lacquer disc gets dipped into a bath of liquid nickel, and it's charged. So the liquid nickel sticks into every nook and cranny of the lacquer disc, and the result is a metal master, which is like a negative of the lacquer disc.
Mhm.
And from that negative called the metal master, you create the stamper. So it's pretty much the same. It's also a metal disc that's negative, but then it's formed and molded exactly according to the specs of the press. So once you've made your metal master, it then gets sent into the third and final stage, which is press. So the metal stamper for side A and side B gets attached into a press, side A facing up, side B facing down. And then there's like a puck. It looks like a cookie dough shaped disc that's put in between, and then it's sandwiched with the label cover for side A and side B. And then there's thousands of tons of heated pressure that just sandwiches that vinyl chip, and it melts, and it just hugs into every crevice of the groove, and then it turns into like a flat pancake. and then the trims get cut off, and voila, that's how your vinyl record is made. So yeah, it's a
Wow.
very it's a labor intensive process with a lot of steps, and there's a lot of room for error. So we have to be very careful with QC, um, and um, so with the QC, we want to make sure that everything sounds good before the final test pressing is made, because the test pressing takes a while to get to. So we do our own QC with the metal mother. It's the positive copy of the metal master, and we listen to it to make sure that everything sounds good before the
Mm.
pressing happens. So yeah, that's why vinyl is a bit of an expensive format, but it's really worth it. Music sounds great on a vinyl record. But yeah, it's a fun process to learn about.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear it because it's there aren't a lot of tangible things in the media industry, and that is one where you have your finished product in your hand and it's like hefty and satisfying.
Yeah, and the great thing about vinyl records is just the album art and the credits, the liner notes are all there. So you
Mhm.
not only really appreciate listening to the music sitting down on loudspeakers, but you also get to know who the people are who are responsible for bringing this music to life.
Mhm.
Streaming is doing a better job of mentioning the credits, but especially for our careers in the entertainment industry, it means so much to recognize, acknowledge all the people that worked behind it. Which just a little tangent. Actually, today, October 15th, is give there's an annual movement by the Recording Academy called called Give Credit. So they encourage all the creators to post images on their social media that lets them give credit to all the producers, engineers, musicians that were responsible for bringing this music to life. So yeah,
Well,
it's a
this is
really
well
good credit.
timed.
Yes.
We're giving you credit.
Oh, cool.
Amazing. And for anybody that's in LA and watching, I've seen vinyl mastering done at Capitol Records. They
Oh,
sometimes have
nice.
events where you can go in and watch. So someday when we're able to be in rooms together again, watch out for that. It's really cool.
You guys are also welcome to visit our studio here on the lot. Um, we're located on the Sony Pictures lot, and
Oh,
we've
cool.
yeah, we're good friends with Ron McMaster, who's the genius vinyl cutter in Capitol Records. In case they're not available, Sony lot has a vinyl cutting room as well. So we're in Culver
There
City.
you go.
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. So I'm going to take a question from a viewer to move on a little bit. Do you, in music, do you get into various surround formats or two-channel spatial audio or anything like
That's
that?
a good question. We actually do surround mastering, but it's not as common in music. So, um, if you visit our studio, we actually have a fixed stereo setup for mastering, but we also have rear speakers for 5.1. Music is not commonly released in Atmos just yet, but it's been done. Um, uh, if you Google it, there's a Beatles album that was recently shown in theaters, not as a movie, but as to listen to the Atmos mix
Hmm.
of I can't remember Yellow Submarine, that album. But yeah, it was mixed in Atmos. And even Beyonce's album was mixed in Atmos, but um, it's not common just yet for music to be released in surround, but it's starting to get more common. In classical music, it's actually more prevalent. There's an amazing record label from Norway called 2L, who just dominate the best immersive sound category in the in the Grammys every year because of just the stellar sound quality of their immersive um, sound for classical music. So I highly recommend checking it out. 2L, that's the name of the label. But for us specifically, we don't do it as often, but um, it might just become more prevalent because of how Atmos and just immersive audio is starting to take off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, have you personally experimented with like binaural audio or anything like that?
Not binaural, but especially in music. However,
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently actually this is still in an experimental phase, but there's this company based in the Bay Area called Embody VR.
Mm-hmm.
And since you're asking about experimental techniques, Embody VR, you should look them up. But they're trying to make immersive audio accessible to headphone users. So you should check that out. But they're also working on this plugin technology where any producer or any creator, engineer can actually monitor with their headphones as if they're in a specific space, recording studio, mastering facility. If they want to like mix their music as if they're in the bakery or in Capitol Records, um, that plugin is going to come out soon, which is really cool. So it's called
Wow.
immersive sound VR, and I know it's going to come out pretty soon. So yeah, those types of experimental um, explorations with immersive sound is starting to happen. Um, and I know binaural music is also done a lot by this artist Imogen Heap, which I
Oh
really
yeah.
love, and she actually won the best engineered surround album recently, just because of her work with binaural surround um, audio with her music. So I personally don't work on it as much, but yeah, it more and more techniques are starting to become more prevalent. So
Yeah, it's
I'd
pretty
love for
wild.
immersive sound to be more um, accessible in the world of music.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
me
cool.
too. I think that would be really cool.
I would go to a movie theater just to listen to Atmos mixed.
Yeah. Another question from a viewer, a little broader. What are your top tips for people just getting started in the music industry?
Um, that's a good question. First is you have to ask yourself what path in the career in the music industry you want to get into, because every career path requires a specific nuanced strategy. But at the end of the day, whichever path you get into or choose for yourself, the thing that I think will help you consistently is to just um, stay connected. And I'm not going to say network, because network is a bit limiting in terms of like definition. You don't want to be just out there like shaking hands and handing out your business cards and giving everyone like a QR code to your portfolio. um, Connecting is more than just networking. For anyone getting their start in the industry, I highly recommend being part of organizations that are specific to your career path. So, getting involved with SMPTE Hollywood is amazing if you want to get into the entertainment industry. There's a lot of if you want to get into music production and audio production as a woman, Sound Girls is great. There's a lot of other organizations as well. Girls Make Beats. Uh, yeah, there is a lot out there, and actually the
Yeah.
more you get involved and the more you volunteer, you not only meet like-minded individuals, but it actually um, opens the door for so many more opportunities. You really grow so much just by being surrounded by like-minded passionate individuals.
Hmm.
And another association organization that's starting to come out is IPMA. stands for Entertainment Industry Professionals Mentoring Alliance. Look them up. But it's an organization that strives to connect aspiring professionals with veterans in the field, and hoping to bridge the opportunity for mentorship. So remember, mentorship is different from like internship and shadowing, and it's more like just getting advice from people who've been around the industry for decades, and just um, getting unique, valuable insight into the industry, specifically based on their own personal experiences. So it's still a young organization, but a lot of amazing yeah, a lot of amazing or trade industries are part of ITMA. So SMPTE, MPSE, American Cinema Editors, Sound Girls, the Recording Academy. So it covers like the very wide gamut of fields in the entertainment industry, not just music, but there's also film, TV, music. So yeah, I think that's the main advice, is to get involved.
That's
Um,
great
yeah,
advice as someone who volunteers. That's how I've gotten a lot of doors open in the industry, even when I wasn't in LA, just showing up,
yeah.
building those bridges. So that answer kind of bridges into another viewer question about progressing your mastering style and improving over time. Did you have inspiration, or was that purely a mentorship type of a thing to help you grow with those skills?
Thanks for asking that. Like, especially with mastering, a lot of people feel even intimidated by getting into this field, just because of like how, again, dark arts, all that like sprinkling some fairy dust into the music. But to for me, I was fortunate enough to be mentored by Doug Sachs, but I know so many amazing, successful mastering engineers that did not have mentors, but continue to thrive. And the thing that really elevates you as a mastering engineer, or just any engineer that wants to like slowly get into a mastering, is to keep collaborating with musicians and to offer your mastering services for them. And in many ways, the opportunity for that happens when you already connect with them in other ways, as for example a recording engineer. If you mix for these artists, if you jam with these artists, again, by being involved in organizations, you actually have more opportunities to connect with more creators. So um, really, the way to keep honing on your mastering skills is to just keep doing it. And really, the only way to keep doing it is not to master your own music, because the point is that the important thing about mastering is that fresh perspective where you haven't really listened to the music that you're working on. And it's that practice and just honing in on your critical listening skills by actually working on music is what's gonna get you ahead. And remember, mastering is not just loading your mastering DAW um, and loading up your plugins. It's also a collaborative effort, and I think that's not discussed as much. The collaborative part, it's an equally important part of the process, because as mastering, you're working on music created by another producer, another mixer. So you have to make sure that your mastering decisions align with their aesthetic, artistic direction. And there's no right way to do it. There, if you want to know the right way, it's to actually know what they want, is to understand their vision, and you don't get there just overnight. Even mastering engineers like me still go through revisions. Revisions is such an integral part of being a mastering engineer. So don't be discouraged if you don't get it right the first time, because that's an important part of the process is to communicate with your client to know what they want and to encourage them to tell you. So definitely encourage the communication process, because that's as much an important part of being a mastering engineer. um so yeah, honing your mastering skills, but also the communication is just as important.
It sounds like your psychology degree really helped you a lot.
I think so. Tell me
I,
about your problems.
right? I mean, it seems like a lot of creative collaborators, you think you'll be an operator, you'll be in the dark alone, but most of the time you're a little bit of a counselor, a confidant, maybe a
Yeah,
tiny bit of a therapist, just trying to get to the root of what they really want, even if they don't know it yet. People don't
exactly.
realize how complex the relationships can be.
Yeah, because music is an intangible thing. So it's like you have to get into their brains, and sometimes you can't even explain it. It's just that language. Like music is kind of like the language here. And again, don't be bummed if it doesn't work out, because sometimes it's also a matter of like finding people that jive with you.
Mhm.
That's what I actually wrote a mastering article that's coming out on this publication. There's a small publication called Women in Sound. And it's run by this amazing woman, Madeline Campbell, who creates like an actual physical magazine that's just $5. And it's an amazing magazine. And she asked me to write a very simple um, article on how to prepare your music for mastering. And a big part of what I say there is you have to find a mastering engineer that you connect with. So not just in a musical way. It's like you guys have to get along, because um so don't be bummed. Like they're like not all people like really connect, but again, it's that constant journey of like meeting people that you'll find like-minded individuals like you, and then word of mouth starts to spread, and then suddenly
Yeah.
you don't even have to promote yourself, because they just like people just inquire for your mastering services.
Yeah, that is so great to hear that you wrote something for Women in Sound. I actually stumbled upon that zine in a bookstore like
Oh,
5 or 6 years ago, and I
amazing.
was like, "What is this? This is awesome!" And it's on my bookshelf still. I love it, and yeah, it's so cool to
Let her
see how
know
it's come
she'll like it.
there. So yeah, that's really cool. Um, Another question for you. So you have a lot of background in music from your parents and stuff. Do you play any instruments yourself?
Actually, I do. So I play piano. Like, I'm sorry, this is like a stereotype joke, but Asian families, you're expected to take piano lessons by the time you're 7 years old. But yeah, piano. I know how to play the piano. I taught myself to play guitar. Those are my two main instruments. But my main instrument is my voice. But yeah, I'm fortunate enough to know how to play instruments. Not
That's
as good
amazing.
as like the people I master music for, but
Still, do you think this is another viewer question? Do you think your background in music or your technical background that you've cultivated is more important, or is there more balance between them?
ooh, well, I think music is very important, but again, people have different ways of immersing themselves in that world. And for me, just being in classical music, and not just classical music, but also choral music in the Philippines. And choral music is a competitive sport in the Philippines. So it's not even a joke. We travel to Europe to compete. And Philippines, there's this choir called Philippine Madrigal Singers, that is a two-time European Grand Prix champion. But yeah, choral music is a sport in the Philippines, and for me, that immersion in choral music and just that fine attention to nuances and details is really what helps me get into the brains of the people I collaborate with. So again, people have different journeys of their own. So if choral music ain't your thing, don't get into choral music. Thought I should say that. But technology and being just comfortable with the world of tech is also very important, because um, the entertainment industry is starting to get more and more immersed um, with the fast-paced evolution of technology, and you just have to be comfortable with it. And me growing up, like tinkering with computers and doing my own like coding, got me comfortable with that world. And anytime a new plugin or a new technology comes up, it just helps me um, not be intimidated by it as much. So it's that fine balance. Again, different, like my story is going to be different from yours. So it's just a matter of like always taking the plunge.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to have a healthy balance of both.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting into nearing the end. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions to help our newcomers and emerging talent land their next music and sound gig. When you're going to be hiring or recommending somebody for an entry-level position, what do you look for in a person like that, and how do they showcase their abilities?
It's just for me, especially being an intern myself, and the bakery. Since I work at the bakery, but I'm not technically the boss. Our main boss is Eric Boulanger. Last name is Boulanger, which is French for baker, which explains our studio's name. But um, for him specifically, what he looks for in an intern is just someone who people can get along with. That's not a really good like answer, but it's also worth putting it out there. It's like sometimes you just have to like for him he for Eric, who is the one who decides who our interns are. It's just finding someone who is not like too intense, like having, because sometimes like some interns can be too eager. I was a very eager intern myself, and so different facilities have different preferences. But especially if you have the skill of just getting along with people and just having a very approachable laid back vibe, then that's something you have to hone in on. But at the same time, adding my own perspective to it, just someone who is very much willing to learn and observe. And I think I speak for a lot of professionals that, especially in music, where they prefer interns who um, try not to interfere with the process. Because that's why when I was in Berkeley, we have a textbook on like guide to be an assistant engineer, and it all boils down to being a fly on the wall, in a sense that um, you don't interfere with the music creation process, because you're there to learn, and there are cases where you feel that you have the answer, but you always have to you always have to adhere to your boss, to your mentor, because so yeah, it's just that fine balance of just observing and not getting in the way of the process, but
Mm-hmm.
being available and being indispensable when you're needed. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's that quiet determination to learn and observe, and then apply it into your own when the um time calls for um for the need for you to be there and provide your skills.
That's a great way to describe an intern. Should be quietly determined.
Yes.
That's excellent. Okay, I have a bit of a more of a fun question from a viewer now to sort of wrap up. If you had to pick, what are some of the best mastered albums you ever heard?
Oh, actually, not even a segue, but to indirectly answer that question, I wrote an article on isotope.com. So I'm a contributing writer for Isotope for their Learn portal, and I actually wrote an article about great sounding records according to mastering engineers. So I've actually rounded up 8 mastering engineers from different fields. There's Glenn Schick, Adam Ayan, Hiba Kadri, Katie Tavini, just all these amazing mastering engineers, and asked for their opinion on what great sounding masters are. So it runs the whole gamut of like different genres. So I highly recommend that you guys check it out. You guys just go to isotope.com/learn, and the article is going to be there. But for me personally, it's going to be a difficult question to ask, because it your own interest kind of like gets involved in that answer too. um I personally am a huge fan of this classical album. Well, not strictly classical, but and Yo-Yo Ma plays Ennio Morricone is
Oh,
such
yeah.
an amazing album, and especially since Ennio Morricone, the film composer, just passed away this year.
Mm.
I just went back to listening to it again. But what I love about that album is they not only captured the organic sound of the orchestra, but listen to Yo-Yo Ma's performance in the cello. You hear the breath that he makes, and even the breath he makes when he plays the cello. You just get sucked into how he sings the melodic lines of the music with his instrument. It's just, for me, a mind-blowing experience. So that's my contribution. There's a lot of records out there, but that's like an obscure, not necessarily obscure, but yeah, I recommend that.
That
But
is
yeah,
amazing.
thanks for sharing the article, Kylie. You
Yes,
guys should
no,
check that out. I highly recommend it.
I'm gonna read it after this.
Fun.
Your passion is clear when you describe a well-mastered album, and it's great to see creatives that really care about everything.
And same
Awesome.
with you.
Oh, thank
The
you.
fact that SMPTE Hollywood organizes this webinars and connects, um, introduces people to all these different industry experts in all these fields. Um, we're all in our career paths because we're all freaking passionate about what we do. So it's great to meet people like you.
Yes, well, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap up now and say thank you again, Jett, for joining. This was a lot of information, and I think there will be people out there that watch this in the future that are so happy to that you've spent an hour of your time in the middle of your workday, clearly.
I actually finished my sessions last night at 5 a.m. So I
That's
got a bit
this
of sleep.
morning.
Yes, yes. So I got a bit of sleep. Hi, Lauren. Yeah, one of the attendees, Lauren Johnson from Avid. But yeah, so it's my absolute pleasure. I'm honored that I'm surrounded by people who create these events. So thank you for having me, Kylie. Thank you,
Oh,
SMPTE
of
Hollywood.
course. Oh, thank you. So I'm going to do a couple of quick announcements. We'll be back again soon with more Ask a Hollywood Expert. We've got some really great people lined up. A colorist for Marvel, a filmmaker, and Adobe Max certified trainer, color scientist, assistant editor, R&D engineer, all kinds of people. So follow SMPTE Hollywood on Facebook or sign up for our emails. So let me go to the next slide. And the SMPTE annual tech conference is coming up in November. It'll be here before you know it. It's virtual, all remote, and the programming went up recently. We've been adding keynotes. I'm co-chairing the conference, so I've got a lot of double duty here across SMPTE. We have a big day planned for esports. That's why it's called Game On, and it's going to be really, really interesting. So check it out. We have very affordable rates and access to things on demand. And if you're suffering a hardship from everything that's going on this year, we also have ways for you to still join. And if you're a student, it's only $10. And if you want to join SMPTE as a member, it's free the first year for students. So that's amazing too. So thank you again for joining, everyone. And if you wouldn't mind, if you attended and you have any thoughts about what we could do, what we could focus on in the future, or you want to get emails from SMPTE about things like this, there is a survey in the chat for you right now. I would appreciate it if you went and gave some feedback so we shape these in the future even better. So thank you everyone for joining, and I'll let you get back to your afternoons or evenings or mornings, wherever. It's all virtual, but nothing, time doesn't matter.
Time doesn't, there's no concept of